My name is Kevin Rutherford. I'm here to talk about life through my life. Welcome to the Accelerate Through Life podcast. Let's go. Hey guys, welcome back to the Accelerate Through Life podcast. I have an extremely special guest with me today. She is a extremely close friend of mine these days, but she started out as my real estate coach, life coach, if you will, all of the above. Helped me through some amazing times in my life and through some amazingly low times in my life as well. So welcome to the show, Cinda Reeves.
Thank you. I appreciate that so very much. It's an honor to be asked, so thank you. I'm a big fan of the podcast. I listen on a regular basis. You know I do, because I have to come in and give you a little critique every now and again. So thank you for inviting me. I love being here.
You know, the amount of listeners we thought might listen to the show we haven't hit that number, right? But the quality has been amazing, the quality of listeners that we've had. So thank you for listening to the show. You know we love constructive criticism, helping us continue to improve. So you had one condition. If you were going to come on the show today, it was under one stipulation. What was that stipulation? What are we doing today?
So, I was honored to be asked, and thank you so much for that. And yet I knew that on podcasts, normally, it's the host that asks the question of the guest. And I said, great, awesome, fantastic. I would love to be on your podcast. And yet we're going to turn the tables. I'm going to be the one asking the questions of you, because it's about accelerate through life, and it's about lessons from your life. And I have had a front row seat of some of the lessons that you've learned along the way. So I was like, let me ask the questions and let's walk through some things in your life and see the lessons in that. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, and you have done such an incredible job of helping me unlock some of the roadblocks that I had in my own brain that I didn't even realize were there. And that is what has created the life that I live today. So you know that I love you, and that this is just an absolute honor to have you on my show today. And I think this is probably going to be one of the most probably downloaded episodes that we've had to date because of the value. I'm nervous and excited all at the same time. I'm excited because I've never been with you and not walked away a better person with any amount of time spent with you or learned a valuable lesson. I'm nervous because I think this is going to be the most vulnerable I've ever been on my show, which I think is exactly what we need. So I'm excited to dive into it, and I want to kind of turn the floor over to you and get started.
Awesome. Fantastic. And this is probably going to be a lot like a coaching session, if you will. And we are unscripted, and so this is going to be raw and transparent, and we're going to dig deep.
Absolutely. Authentic. I love it.
So let's start back, all the way back to that very first conversation that you and I had in 2017, and actually even before that. So you were a race car driver, and all of a sudden you decide to get into real estate. So what made you think about getting into real estate?
So it's kind of funny because I feel like I tried everything except real estate. I was trying to avoid it, if you will, because I didn't know anything about it. I was uncomfortable. And so I was working out at Texas Motor Speedway at the time for Team Texas High Performance Driving School. When a mutual friend of ours, Barrick McEwen, was also out there, he watched the interactions that I had with people. And he continuously told me, just off watching that interaction, that I should be in real estate. And I kept telling him, man, first of all, I was 17 years old at the time, you got to be 18. So I was like, hey, I'm not even old enough to be, to qualify for that, to get my license. And he just stayed after me. And I tried everything but that to avoid that. I tried becoming a race car driver. I was in the construction industry, obviously a mechanic, a bunch of different avenues. And finally, I broke down when I was 20 years old and came to Barrick and attended career night that he was teaching at the time. And I thought, you know what? Maybe he's right. And he explained to me it's not necessarily about real estate. We will teach you everything you need to know about that aspect of things, but it's about people. And people need, our industry, I'll never forget him telling me this, our industry needs your love. It needs your caring for others. It needs your excitement for life. And, I didn't fully understand everything that he was explaining to me at the time. But I thought, you know what, let's give it a shot. And then, hey, if we don't like it, getting into real estate is not that big of an investment, right? Now that where I'm at in life now, I wish it was a more costly investment to get into the real estate world. But at the time, I thought it was kind of a low risk. And so I got my license when I was 21. I was encouraged to join a team, and being as stubborn as I am, I thought I can do this on my own, right? The fear was that if I joined a team, they're going to tell me I can't go race on a Friday night or a Saturday or something of that nature. And so being stubborn, I decided to go create the mess on my own. And I leveraged other agents within the office that had experience. And finally, one of the agents that I relied heavy on, Charles Newber, he got tired of me. Finally, he was just fed up. You know Charles, right?
Yes.
And so he said, "Son, I've loved getting you to this point. You need a coach." And that's all he said, and we hung up. And I didn't even know what to do with that information. And so I called Barrick, and at the time he was the assistant team leader, if I'm not mistaken, and he introduced me to you. And I remember we set an appointment, showed up to the appointment, and I can't tell you everything that went on in that conversation, but I remember you had me extremely scared. I was fearful, which is hilarious saying now, as well as I know you and the thousands of people's lives that you've helped change. And so at the time, though, I was fearful about that. And so that was our first meeting, and that's how we got into real estate.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a moment, because it's about lessons learned. And you did walk away from that meeting and said, "No, I'm not hiring a coach. Mm-hmm. Not hiring me or any other coach."
Yeah.
And it was no, and it had to do with fear. So talk to us a little bit about that fear. What was that fear about?
Yeah, I think ultimately the fear was being uncomfortable, right? I had a fear that you guys were going to make me do things that were going to make me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I was comfortable with where I was at in my life.
Okay.
So I wasn't looking for growth. I was content. I honestly, I think I was just fearful of growth, right? And so having the fear of somebody telling me what to do and how to improve my life, I can't explain it, but there was just a roadblock up in my brain of, I don't want that. I just absolutely don't want that. And then fast forward 3 years later, I can't help but think about where I could have been if I would have joined coaching then versus when I actually did it 3 years later. In 2020 is when we kicked off our coaching journey. And I remember having that exact same fear when we met the second time and thinking, okay, you have two decisions, right? What I know now is a bold law. You do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got.
Right.
Or you can make the decision to change. And so that's when I decided, you know what, maybe there's something to this coaching thing. And I will say, seeing results, we do a partner meeting here at Keller Williams once a month, and you see all the results, and it seemed like all of the high achievers were in coaching. And I thought, well, there's got to be something to this. So that's when I decided to join coaching.
You know, there's this little voice in the back of our head. We call them limiting beliefs, right? That wants to keep us in the comfort zone, right? That whispers to us, sometimes yells at us, no, don't do that, right? Stay in the comfort zone. And you were staying in the comfort zone. And yet, when you came to see me that second time and you were ready to get uncomfortable. So how did you make that decision, or how did you move forward with going, okay, I know this is not going to be comfortable, and yet I'm ready to be uncomfortable? How did you make that decision?
Well, I think that's a really long answer, right? There was a lot of thought that went into this conversation, and I'm going to tie a lot of it back to BOLD. And for those of you listening that don't know what BOLD is, it's Business Objective Life by Design. And across from me is now one of the greatest BOLD coaches currently touring the country and teaching BOLD. So I think just all the lessons that I learned in that, we were talking before we went live on this, and that I had attended BOLD 3 times before I met my now wife, Rebecca, and then I've attended BOLD 3 times since that she's been in my life. And I think about the difference of the way I saw everything, and I think it goes back to, you can lead, that horse to the river and then lead that same horse back to that same river, but it's not the same horse and it's not the same river.
Yeah.
Right. So I was at a different phase of my life, and just really starting to mature and try to figure out what was God's purpose for me. All right. What was the point of getting my real estate license if all I was going to do was sell, 9 to 12 houses a year?
Yeah.
And I remember in BOLD, I had wrote down how much money do you want to make, right? And they tie it down to how many families do you want to serve and help.
Yes.
And I remember writing that number down, and this number scared me. Like it just, I still shake thinking about that number. We've surpassed it, right? But I just remember being in that moment, shaking, and the bold coach walked up to me and said, "You need to double that."
Yeah.
And I was like, I would be so happy if I could do this right here, right? And so that's when I knew I wasn't going to be capable of continuing to grow at the pace that I wanted to on my own. I had to have somebody that had been there and done it before me. And I think it's important to say that there was a lot of fear from mentors and people that I look up to when I told them I was getting into coaching. I'll never forget it. I'm going to throw my parents under the bus. I have the best parents in the world. But I remember telling them I was getting into coaching, and they just absolutely did not understand the concept of, first of all, how much money did you say again a year? And why are you doing this? And that things of that nature. And I think, some of that is generational differences.
Sure.
Right. Absolutely. And so now that they've seen how coaching propelled me, right, from where I was at to where we're at today, I think they would say you could double that amount that I told them I was going to pay in coaching, and they'd say it's worth it all day long. I know I would, right? And that goes for coaching and bold and the whole 9 yards.
So much of coaching has to do with helping people self-discover and to help them identify their blind spots and move forward. And so let's talk about some blind spots. So you came into coaching and we started to work together, and you were racing, and in your mind it was, okay, the racing is one world and real estate is a different world, and that they don't cross each other, that they are separate. And then we start to work together and identify the fact that your value and what you had to add to that racing community to help them. You already had a relationship with them. They all already knew you, loved you, trusted you. And yet now you had this new value that you could bring that was of tremendous benefit for them. And yet it took you a little while to make that connection and to understand what you could bring to that community from a real estate standpoint. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was the lack of creativity in my brain, right? I had that, again, I kind of had a wall up to that idea because I didn't know anybody in the racing world that was also in the real estate world. And I remember sitting across from you kind of like this in a coaching session, one of our first coaching sessions, stating that to you, that I wanted to be the race car driver that sold real estate, but I didn't know how because I'd never seen it be done. Yeah. And at the time, I feel like I had two personalities. Here I'm a race car driver at the racetrack, and over here I'm a real estate professional at Keller Williams. And your eyes lit up when I said that there was nobody, that I didn't know anyone within the industry that was a race car driver that was also a real estate expert. And what you saw was opportunity. Yeah. What I saw was fear of how we always fear the unknown. And sure. And again, getting out of what we're comfortable doing. And so I thought, well, man, if I go to these people that I already have a relationship with and I start asking for their business, maybe they're not going to like me, right? Maybe they're going to think that now I'm just after the relationship because I want their business. And all of these limiting beliefs begin to creep in. You just call it the drunk monkey in bold, right? And I think that is such a key learning lesson of how do you overcome that fear? Yes. How do you tell that voice within your, inside that we all have that's telling us, the imposter syndrome? Yeah. I think anybody that is achieving anything in life that's continuously moving forward consistently face that, being critiqued. I related that, my parents didn't understand why I was getting into coaching. At the same time, me and my wife, Becca, decided to buy a house back in 2020. And I remember the amount of people there was not one person in our family that said, yes, that's a good idea. We signed on a home in 2020 in May, right? Not one person in our family told us that was a good idea. Everybody was fearful, didn't know. We hadn't ever done anything like this. The world had been shut down as we knew it for 60 days. And you guys think you're going to go buy a house? Hindsight 2020 ends up being one of the best decisions we ever made. Yes. Right? And so I think you just have to figure out what's going to be best for you and listen to those people that are giving you advice or that, are giving you their opinions. But at the end of the day, you have to listen to your heart and trust your gut feeling and do what you need to do for you.
There's three fears that usually hold us back, right? And it's fear of the future, fear of rejection, and fear of failure. And so often that gets us stuck right where we are, and we stay in that fear and don't move forward. And so it's been such a privilege to watch you feel the fear and do it anyway. And, we have a bold law called Fear or Faith You Choose. And one of the things that we teach is, so fear really and faith are kind of the same thing. Faith is the belief that something great is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Fear is the belief that something bad is going to happen, and you get to choose which one you're going to go through. And while maybe we can't get rid of the fear, because fear in our humanity, fear is just a natural thing.
That's right.
And yet to feel the fear and walk forward and do it anyway, to be willing to be uncomfortable and do things that you wouldn't normally do. For instance, I love the fact that one of the ways that you built your business was knocking on doors. Mm-hmm. So few people will actually go knock on people's doors in today, and yet you did that and did such an incredible job with that, and it helped build your business. So talk a little bit about going, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go knock on 100 doors in a day and see who I can talk to so I can build my business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head with the faith or fear you choose. And what I mean by that is that there's also another side of things that, I said we signed on a house in May of 2020. When I first started door knocking was during COVID. And that is when I saw an opportunity because no one was door knocking.
Yeah, so at least everybody was home.
Everybody's home. There was this huge opportunity, and people were looking for conversation. They were longing for conversation. Think about, being at the office and all the conversations that we have through the hallways and stuff. For example, up here at Keller Williams Dallas Metro North, all of a sudden they didn't have that anymore. And so by the time I started door knocking in May, June timeframe, people really missed that aspect of it. And absolutely terrified to go knock on my first door. I just can't even put it into words, the emotions that were running through my body. And yet, I knew that I had a mortgage payment that was coming. And a little bit more perspective is I had just lost my other two jobs. Texas Motor Speedway that I was working at part-time while I was doing real estate had shut down for a full year. And then American Airlines, I was working at DFW Airport for American Airlines, had also had massive layoffs. And so I never ended up going back to either of those jobs. But at the time, I didn't know that. And I remember having the conversation with my mom at the time, telling her that I was going to walk away from my job because I had door knocked and created this business, and her telling me, I wish you wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
She has been an entrepreneur her whole life. My parents have built up a successful construction business. They've got a real estate portfolio, et cetera, and for where they come from, they've done absolutely incredible for themselves. And she knew how hard that entrepreneur journey is. And she said, I really love the aspect of you having a guaranteed paycheck, you having all these health benefits, et cetera, et cetera. And your mom's influence is typically a huge one,
sure,
right? Whether that's on marry this woman, don't marry this woman, whatever it is, typically you're going to listen to your mom, right? Or she's at least going to have you're going to take that into consideration, right? It's going to hold weight in the conversation. And I told her, I said, Mom, I love you, but I have to go do this, right? It's just, I can feel it within me that I'm going to step away from these jobs and I'm going to pursue entrepreneurship 100%. And 2 weeks later, she came up to me and she said, it's finally clicked for me. And I had no idea what she was talking about. And she said, I told you I was fearful and I kind of asked you not to do it and you've done it all anyway. And there's no going back at this point. You've kind of made your bed, right? She said, this is all you've known. This is what you've grown up watching me and your dad do. And so why would I think it's just going to make sense for you to go have a quote unquote normal job? Absolutely nothing wrong with having a normal job, right? But she started to understand that aspect of things. And so now to see that where we're at today, she is forever grateful that in that one instance, I didn't listen to her. There's a whole long list of other instances.
Other times.
She wished I would have listened that I didn't.
Yeah.
But yeah. So door knocking and everything that comes with lead generation, especially, I still think about it today. We're doing our flip over here and I'm getting ready to go host an open house and door knock around that. And when I get ready to go knock on that first door, I still feel all those feelings. And then I know, though, hey, I've done this before, right? How many hundreds of doors have I knocked on to get to where we're at today? And ultimately, I think once you convince yourself that you're bringing these people value, that you're not bothering them, and that you could actually be saving them or helping them, I think that's what really starts to change your perspective and make you think, you know what, these people need me. They absolutely need me. They need the value that I bring to the table on the real estate side of things.
Yeah. So if I could sum up kind of what we've been talking about until now, the lesson learned is how do you take those limiting beliefs and turn them into something positive? How do you get rid of those? How do you step out of that comfort zone and feel the fear and do it anyway? And your ability to take those negative thoughts and turn them into a positive affirmation and make the choice to think in a positive way is what's allowed you to battle and win over those limiting beliefs that help push you forward. Another lesson that I would say that I have observed in you that has helped propel you in life and in business is that you're a very learning-based person, right? You've been consistently learning and growing from the beginning. So talk a little bit about growth and being learning-based.
Yeah. There's a bold law that your business grows to the extent that you do.
Yeah, I love that you're using all the bold laws, right?
And I know the people that are within Keller Williams are probably thinking, yeah, I get it. Let's move on. But I have to address these bold laws because they are what has propelled me to where I'm at today, right? Uh-huh. I think it's not about selling real estate. It's about following a schedule. Hello? Right? There's so many 36 different bold laws that we could go through and talk about each and every single one of those.
So learning-based and growth. You shared a conversation with me that you had with your dad about growth and that you didn't want to grow your business, which in reality is you didn't want to grow yourself. Isn't that exactly what you were saying? And your dad had a conversation with you that kind of turned you around.
Yep. I remember riding to the racetrack with my dad, and luckily for me, that has been such a privilege, getting to ride to and from the races with my dad, my father-in-law, whoever the mentor was at the time, and all that I've been able to learn from them, both not just driving to the races, but also time in the shop and working on race cars and things of that nature. And I remember telling my dad, I said, I don't think I want my business to grow any more than it is right now because I don't think I can handle it. And he laughed at me. And it kind of offended me, right? Hurt my feelings, if I'm being honest. And he began to coach me through it. And he didn't realize what he was doing to the level. He would never say he's a coach or he's this or that. But as 100%, he began to coach me through the process. And, one of the things that I brought that up is we had just had a buyer. This is years ago now, right? 5 years ago. We'd had a buyer that used an inspector that we had recommended, and they did a test on some plumbing. Next thing you know, it flooded the house. The sellers are on vacation. It's just this huge mess. My buyers want out of the contract. The sellers are trying to hold people responsible. Just chaos, right? And I remember just dealing with that stress and then the other stress of the other deals that we had going on. As a realtor, you wear a lot of different hats. And at the time, what he was telling me is that you need to focus on the things that you can control, and that's all you need to focus on. Because as a realtor, you're asked to control a lot of different things, but there's a lot of things you can't control within a transaction. And so he began to unlock that and tell me that your life will get easier if you will step through that limiting belief of that you're comfortable and you are where you want to be, and figure out where you need leverage, where you need growth. And I think that's where I refer back to your environment. You become like the 5 people that you surround yourself with. Obviously, I use my dad as an example in that example, but within real estate coaches and just whoever you hang around, I always, bring this up to people that who are the 5 people you spend the most time with? For a lot of us these days, it's your spouse. Well, there's a huge influence on the way that your life is going to end up, and so for me, within the racing community, it's obviously been my parents, now my father-in-law, and so I've had awesome examples to lean on that have continued to help me grow. I have tax questions. I have all of these different questions about I have no idea what to do, but I know somebody that does. And I think that was when I got into real estate, or when I got into coaching, I should say, and continued to, I think we doubled our business the first year in coaching with you, if I recall correctly. And I thought there was a lot of first-time scenarios being thrown at me, and you taught me a lesson. Hey, I don't know the answer to that question, but I know somebody who does.
Yeah.
And you said, call me, right? I'll help you get to where you need to go. So.
Yeah. So one of the things that I kind of witnessed, because you do plug in and you do take advantage of the learning opportunities, which, we have a tremendous number of learning opportunities. You and I are going to a class this afternoon together, as a matter of fact. And one of the ones that you took that I think was way outside your comfort zone was train the presenter, because public speaking was not necessarily something that was in your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And you were going to step out of that comfort zone and you were going to stand in front of a group of people and you were going to speak and talk about the lessons that you learned through that.
Yeah. Train the presenter. I think about the situations that people put me in, and whether I wanted to be in them or not, I didn't want to let those people down. But they believed in me more than I believed in myself at the time. And so in this situation in particular, of Train the Presenter, you had encouraged me to go attend this class. Barrick had encouraged me to take over Career Night, right, to where I taught Career Night every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. And that was kind of my first public speaking experience. And what a humbling experience it was. And yet I really enjoyed it. It was fun. I love people. I love being able to interact with people and just have a conversation with them at the end of the day. Is this the career for them or not? But back to the Train the Presenter, I'll never forget Holly Prescott standing up there. And Holly Prescott is very well known within the Keller Williams industry. Some of you listening to this obviously may not know who Holly is. She stood up there and she said, I know you're nervous today, but understand this, that if you're doing this for yourself, you're going to be nervous. You're going to think about, are they thinking about what I'm wearing? Are they thinking about the way I look? Are they thinking about the words I use? But if you're doing this for the people in the audience, then you're not going to worry about all of that. And I think about what you came in shortly after in that class and gave a testimony about how that class had helped you as well. And I think about, what if, you, Holly Prescott, just to name a few, John Prescott, any of them never overcame that fear? You know how many thousands of people's lives wouldn't be changed, wouldn't be what they are today if you guys didn't decide to overcome that? And so I just think about stepping into that. So, and the importance of that, because we're not really doing it for ourselves. We're doing it for everybody else. And I think with Train the Presenter, and especially with Train the Presenter Advance, so you're going to go up here and you're going to give a 10-minute, 10 to 20 minute, 10-minute presentation. Uh-huh. And then you're going to sit on the hot seat. Oh my gosh, just listening to, when they were telling me what was going to happen, I thought, I'm not going. I'm just absolutely not going. And while you sit on this hot seat, they are going to critique you. And they're going to tell you some things that you did bad, and then they're going to turn around and tell you some things that you did good. And I think that lesson in and of itself was helpful. Knowing, which is exactly what you do, we talked about this at the beginning of the podcast, is that you text me, you call me and say, hey, I was just listening to your episode and here's some room for improvement. Stop saying this, start saying this, and things of that nature. And I think that was a huge learning curve for me, is that constructive criticism is okay. They're not giving me this criticism because they don't like me. They're giving me this because they care about me, because they love me, and they know that I'm capable of more. And I think that's what we've got to shift the mentality around in our society today.
Yeah. So Holly Prescott taught me the lesson that there's a huge difference between criticism and feedback. Because I would always call it criticism, and she's like, no, Cinda, it's not criticism.
Yeah.
It's feedback. And feedback, if you think about it, is really people who love you, that want you to be the very best that you can possibly be. And it's a gift. Right? Mm-hmm. It's a gift they're giving you so that you can get better. So while I still have a tendency to call it criticism at times, that Holly's voice is in my head going, no, it's not criticism, it's feedback, and it's a gift that people give.
Yeah.
So removing limiting beliefs and being able to walk forward and change those into something positive and think differently, and then to continue to be learning based, to grow and to continue to work on your knowledge and your skill level. has helped you propel your business. Now, we had a conversation about the difference in victim mentality and accountability, and that we can choose. At any given moment, we have the choice as to what direction we're going to be in. Now, I want to be really clear here so that people understand what we're talking about. We're not talking about someone that has been a victim of violence or tragedy, or we're not talking about a victim. We're talking about a victim mentality, which means that woe is me, this always happens to me, poor me kind of mentality. And while in our humanity, our first thought may be, poor me, why did this happen to me? And yet, in that moment, we can choose to go into accountability. And that is absolutely in our control and our choice. And you and I had a conversation about that earlier. So talk a little bit about that accountability mentality and how you choose that.
Yeah, well, I'll start with this Deion Sanders quote that I had told you that I really loved. It's, "Don't let my confidence offend your insecurities." Right? Don't let my confidence offend your insecurities. And I think there's a lot to that, because social media is a big part of our world today, whether people want to. I still know people that are struggling to accept that. It is a big part of our world. It's a big part of my business and so forth. And if you watch on social media, the people that are often winning and doing good are not the ones getting the most attention. It's the people, it's the victim mentality, the poor, pitiful me, that ends up getting shared and talked about the most. And that drives me crazy. I don't even know how else to put it, other than go have a conversation with 5 people that are living average lives, and then go have 5 conversations with people that are living extraordinary lives. And tell me, if you were in control of your life, which you are, which one would you rather go do, right? Would you rather go live this average life, or would you rather go live this extraordinary life? There's a bold law, and I always butcher this one a little bit, going back to the bold laws, that you get what you get based on your imagination.
You get what you deserve in your imagination.
You get what you deserve in your imagination. Basically meaning, if you can dream it, you can achieve it.
Sure.
But you've got to figure out your why, right? And once you figure out the why, then you can figure out the how. There's what we say here at Keller Williams is, when you figure out the why, the how is easy. So I just think we've got to figure out how to shift the narrative. And I lose touch with it from not watching the news and kind of staying in my bubble, surrounded by successful entrepreneurs such as yourself, that I don't even really pay attention to it. And yet I remember, especially when I was first getting started, you bought me the tripod stand because you knew that I wanted to speak. I often think about this, God created so many different species on the earth, but only one has a voice, and that's us, right? Humans. Yeah. And so he wants us to be heard, and he wants us to spread good news and to encourage one another. And so, with all of that being said, I think there's a importance there that, that people want to hear positive, uplifting encouragement, and that I think about the headlines on the news. They just need to get clicks. That's it. If you click on the headline, they get paid. So that doesn't mean that everything within that news article is going to be 100% factual, right? And if you go click on those articles, 90% of the time they're victim mentality articles, right? And so they're training us that's going to be, that's the popular thing to do. Yeah. And I, especially I'm passionate about it now, having a son, that Dusty's not going to have a victim mentality. He's going to have a winner's mentality, and that he's going to do what it's going to take. And I say all of that because I remember when I first got into coaching with you, you set up my entire year. And we had, hey, here's quarter 1. We broke that down into 12 weeks, broke that down into 3 months. And then here's what you should be doing this week. Here's what you should be doing right now. And I remember one of the weeks I didn't do all of the activities that we had scheduled out for me to do. And you said, okay, that's okay, but don't tell me you want this then. Yeah. Because this is what's going to get you here, but your actions are not aligning with what you're telling me. And when I think about victim mentality versus going out and doing the work, that's what I think of.
You mentioned average life, and you said that several times. And Gary Keller teaches us in the foreword of the Shift book, he tells a story that he told to his son about people living an average life, and that the road to average is paved with "I don't want to." Right. And so people that choose to do just what they want to do live very average or even below average lives. And if you want to live to the right of average, if you want to live that bigger, better life, then sometimes we have to, or maybe most of the time, we have to do what we don't want to do when we don't want to do it to get to where we really want to go.
That's right.
And that comes back to that accountability. And when we talk about accountability, we're not talking about being accountable to someone else making us do something. We're talking about being accountable to ourselves, and that we can rely on ourselves, and that we choose on a day-to-day basis to do what will allow us to live to the right of average. Now, do we ask other people to help us? Do we hire coaches? Do we have people around us that help us stay accountable to ourselves? Absolutely we do, because sometimes we need a little help in doing that.
Well, and I can't help but think I would only be a quarter of the way to where I'm at today if I only did the things I know I need to do when I felt like doing them. Because how often at 5:30 in the morning do I feel like going to the gym? Not very often, right? I think about how often do we want to lead gym? There's always something else we could be doing. And, what I think we see a lot of in today's society is aimless scrolling. There's a lot of people just aimlessly scrolling on social media to pass time. I want to hit on something. I'll flip the script really quick.
Okay.
Because I think you hit on something earlier about being comfortable. And, I know so many people that call me and encourage me or text me and say, you have accomplished so much at such a young age, et cetera, et cetera. I wish I would have done more, or, hey, I'm in my late 30s and I just can't believe how fast it got here. You became a bold coach just a couple of years ago. And so I really want the listeners, to hear this. I don't think we did a proper introduction of why I hired you to be my real estate coach, all the success that you've had within the real estate industry that you were able to pass along to me. But then to not, and then have a successful coaching journey. Like, I'm not your only success story in coaching. You have several of those as well. And you didn't stop there. You decided to go be a bold coach, which is an extremely difficult task. It takes a lot of commitment. You had, the financials weren't the reason. I could go through a whole list that you didn't need to go do it. Why would you go travel to Boston, Massachusetts in the middle of winter to teach these people? So these people that are stuck in a rut, so to speak, and they're in their, any age could be stuck in a rut. But some people think, man, I've been doing the same thing for 30 years and it's just flown by and I can't believe I'm still doing, what I told myself I wouldn't be doing 30 years ago, 30 years later. So tell us a little bit about all that and how you became a bold coach.
So I thank you for that and giving me that opportunity to share that. And I don't share this often, quite frankly, and certainly I've never shared it on a podcast before. It was 2 years ago. So I am now 65 years old. Yes, 65.
She doesn't look it.
You
if
guys
you're watching
can
online.
on the comments put, God, you look great for 65. Okay, great, thanks. And so when I was 63 years old, and I was challenged to become a bold coach. And I'm like going, what? I'm too old to be a bold coach. It's too late. I'm almost done right there. Why? No. When in reality, it was that I was afraid I wasn't good enough, that I wouldn't be good at it. And I thought about all the things that I coach and I teach. And it's about being learning based. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to feel the fear and I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm going to continue to learn and to grow and to become and to really live out what I teach. And so I decided to go on that journey. And I will tell you, it's one of the most challenging journeys professionally that I have ever been on. It is a tough road to become a bold coach. And it's a very rewarding one because of the growth opportunity, both personally and professionally, that you can become. So I have been in a room before and I've said, so don't let somebody tell you you're too old. Don't let somebody tell you you're too young to become a real estate agent. Don't let somebody tell you you're too this or too that. If you have a goal, if you have a desire to become, to reach out and see if you can accomplish something, then go ahead, step out and accomplish that. Go after that. Whether you make it or you don't, the opportunity for growth and learning is there. And don't listen to all those negative voices around you. Don't let people hold you back and tell you you're too something, right? Go for it anyway.
Yeah,
so
I love that. Well, and I had a family member recently call me, and he called me and said that he had failed a test. And I said, hey, I want to stop you right there. You didn't fail that test, right? You may not have passed the test, but you're not the same. You're not going to be the same person taking the same test, right? You have learned. Now you've got the upper hand, and you get another shot at going to do it. And so, I will say that I'm guilty of always wanting to be 5 years ahead of where I'm at today.
Yeah.
And that is, if you ask my wife what's one of her biggest complaints with me, after she got through her long list, the biggest one would probably be that I don't slow down and smell the roses often enough. It wasn't the way I was raised. I always think there's something else that needs to be done. What's our next, challenge? I've gotten comfortable being uncomfortable. And so the moment that I get comfortable, I freak out.
So let's talk about being, purposeful in life, right? So you've got a lot of things going on right now, and I'd like you to kind of walk through all the things that are going on right now, and your process for trying new things, and then deciding, so what's most important? What are the most important things?
So I think the biggest lie on the internet right now is that you have to have multiple streams of income to get rich. I actually don't believe that at all. And everything that I've learned within the self-development journey over the last several years now, I believe that you have got to master one thing. And then once you master that one thing and you get leverage within it, now you can move on to the next thing. And so, Gary Keller, I'm saying one thing. And of course, me and you know what I'm referring to, but that's a book that was written by Gary Keller.
Yeah.
And that book certainly changed my life, such as many books that Gary Keller has wrote. And so, as I have diversified into certain things, first and foremost, I couldn't do it without leverage. The first thing I did was Dusty or somebody, Bold Coach, had told me, hire your best talent. And he had his joke that he had hired his wife, and my best talent was my wife. And so I brought Becca into the industry with me as well. And that has just been an absolute game changer. Everything that I am terrible at doing, she thrives at. And then same vice versa. So we balance each other out well. And then, from there, once I realized I had leverage with help with her, I knew there was other things I wanted to try. And such as this podcast. I think about that we're doing our first flip all on our own, going to theology classes on Monday nights right now for the last 9 months, I guess it's been. Just a lot of new things. Of course, managing a race car team with 3 race cars. The leverage within that is obviously within my dad and my father-in-law. And then we've got an awesome team that we've really put together over the last year with Chase and Mitchell and Mark and several others that just pitch in to make that all happen. So, I was telling y'all before we started recording that I'm in this phase of life where I'm kind of sampling everything. Mm-hmm. I think about when the way I was taught to see if the spaghetti noodles are done, you throw them against the wall, and if it sticks, they're done. If it doesn't stick, they're not done. And so I think about that as that's kind of what I'm doing. Okay, we've got the real estate ball rolling, if you will. We've got an incredible business with several repeat customers and referral business, et cetera. And so from there, I was doing the videos on social media, and people just continued to, hey, podcasts are the new thing right now, and everybody's doing it kind of thing. So I decided we would try this out. And I don't know what the end goal with this podcast is. I really don't. But I know it's helping me be a better version of me. right? Because I'm able to go back and listen to myself. And I remember I made my first ever video standing in my living room. Do you remember this?
Uh-huh.
And I sent
Yes.
it to you.
You sent it to me. Yeah.
This is probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And, you gave me feedback, not criticism. And, I can't help but think about how far I've come since then. But you got to start.
That's right.
And I think that's the biggest thing that our society is also misleading in, is that you're going to, we all want to get from A to Z as fast as possible and skip all those letters in between. And that's just not the way life works, right? And so you've got to trust the process and go through the process and try to figure out, okay, what am I learning in this lesson? Okay, what am I learning in this lesson? Just like I was saying earlier about not failing the test, we always fail forward. We're always going to continue to learn. My son Dusty, he's been walking for several months now, and he's running. That man falls 100 times a day, right? That little boy falls 100 times a day, but he never stays down.
Right.
I mean, he is back up and at him quicker than what you could ever believe. And I think that's the way we all need to be in life.
Yeah. So Dusty, falls down. He doesn't go, oh, that was too hard. I'm not getting back up again. I'm not trying again. He just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going.
That's right. He never quits.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some of the low points maybe over your career. What are some of the low points and how did you deal with those?
I think this is one of the hardest conversations as an entrepreneur to have, because you have to continuously seem like you're at the top of your game and that you're thriving, because the moment that you don't, you begin to lose business. You can't, talk about on social media, oh, I just had 3 deals fall apart in one day. It's not going to get you more business, right? And so I think about just handling that adversity and continuously pushing forward, and staying positive through all of that. The inspector example earlier that I gave with the house flooding, mm-hmm. I remember very vividly telling Becca, maybe this isn't what I want to do. I mean, this is such a fiasco, and, there's people, I'm going to sue you for this, we're going to sue, et cetera, et cetera. I thought, maybe this just isn't for me. Multiple examples through that, that we have some amazing success stories within real estate, but then there's also some of those horror stories that come up, whether, regardless of what industry you're in, if you do something long enough. Right? Things are going to happen. Uh-huh. And I think about how it's not what happens to us, but how we react. We're all going through life. We all have things going on that we wish were different or better. And it's up to us to make the choices that are going to fix those situations. I think about focusing on the solution, not the problem. And I know that's another bold law, right? I'm on a roll on these bold laws, but some of the lessons and lows, I would say, that's a tough one. I mean, where do you start? There's been a lot of them. I don't know. What do you think?
So
I feel like you know more of them probably than I do.
When things fall through, right? So we have a tendency, especially when you're newer, you have a tendency the moment you get a buyer, the moment you get a listing, you're counting the dollars, you're counting the commission, and you're counting on it. And when it doesn't happen and it falls through for one reason or another, all of a sudden there's just devastation, like it's the worst thing in the world that you lost something and yet you never had it. And then it's things like that take us back and have us step back when we're newer or when we don't have that strong mindset, right? And it makes it more difficult to move forward. Mm-hmm. So it's things like that are low points. We're, low points. 2023 was kind of a low point in the industry because the number of transactions across the country was so much lower. Mm. So the opportunity overall was less, and yet opportunity doesn't have to be less for each individual agent. It depends on how you go about it.
Yeah. And I think about in the bold room, you guys use percentages to say, okay, this, if you have this many clients, then this percentage is going to use you. And me just being the overly confident man that I was back in the day, just thought, nope, I can cross that out and put 100% because 100% of my clients are going to use me. Well, when you only got 10 clients a year, your odds are pretty high, right? But as you continue to grow, what I have certainly learned is I've had some of my best friends not use me as a real estate agent for various different reasons. And so I think those lows are that finding out that just because you are somebody's best friend or even relative doesn't necessarily mean that you provided enough value for them to use your business. And so I think about, when you point a finger at somebody, all those fingers pointing back at you and taking that responsibility of saying, okay, I'm not mad at them for not using me. Right? And I can always say that. I'm going to love this person anyway because I love them for the relationship that I had with them in the first place, not because of the real estate transaction. The transaction is going to come and go, right? But the relationship is going to go on forever. And that's the way we always handle any of our clients, right? The transaction doesn't stop at the closing table. And so I think about how can I improve. Where can I improve my value? Because clearly I had an amazing relationship with this person, but I didn't show enough value as to why they should use me for real estate. And I think this applies to any type of sales career that you're in. And I think the other big thing is that with everything going on economically, where we're at economically, is there's more opportunity for growth now than there's ever been. And I believe that in every industry.
I would agree.
I remember we ended our coaching after 2 years, so in 2022. And when I walked into the room a few months later with my new life coach, mutual friend of ours that we both love.
Yes.
I had another significant goal. I said, hey, my business has been on a growth scale. We just continue. We doubled it the first year, and then we doubled it the second year. And we just want to continue to grow. And she said, I'm going to be honest with you. You're going to be lucky to do what you did in 2022 in 2023.
Yeah.
And happy to announce that we did. And she said, what a successful year, right?
Absolutely.
And so I just think those are the struggles within entrepreneurship. And I can't help but go back to that imposter syndrome. I think that's the challenge, is that you're always going to feel like somebody's after you. You're always going to wonder if you're doing enough. Because as an entrepreneur, I can't help but sit back and think about all that goes on that makes the Rutherford team what it is today, right? Managing the emails, managing the phone calls, managing the inspections, the photography, the staging, handling the roofers, the flooring, whatever, that all that goes into that, right? It's very easy to get overwhelmed by it all and think that it's too much and that you can't handle it. And then, of course, that's where the leverage comes in.
Let's say leverage.
Yep,
leverage.
absolutely.
Yeah. So talk to us about the highs. What are some of the highs through you were 21 years old when you became a real estate agent, and you're not 21 anymore. So talk to us about the highs along the way. What have been some of the memorable things that were just awesome for you?
Yeah, well, I'll put a quick bow on the lows.
Okay.
Because I think where I was going with that is that the people that I thought would support me the most, I was often let down by. And so I think that's a reality that a lot of entrepreneurs need to have, is it's easier to go make a raving fan, if you will, out of somebody I just met than it is somebody that I've known for 10 or 15 years. I don't know why that is. I see that within every industry. I think about when I first started making my videos, let's say that, for example, there'd be 10 comments. There'd be 9 positive comments, but there'd be 1 negative one. Of course, that 1 negative one is coming from somebody that I know. And guess which one we choose to focus on?
Well, the negative.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think that's the hardest part, is being able to drown all that out and say, hey, they're not a part of my big why anyway. Right? I've got to continue to push forward and not let that negativity keep me down. Because it's just like we were talking about with Dusty running around and getting knocked down. You're going to get knocked down in life. And it's not about how many times you get knocked down. It's about how many times you get up. So anyways, put a bow on that. The highs. So I don't even necessarily know that I can talk about the highs within the real estate industry before I can first talk about the highs in life. Okay. I had mentioned that I did attended Bold 3 times, graduated Bold 3 times before I met my wife. And I think about how the next 3 times were so much different. Because when I met the right person in Becca, she all of a sudden motivated me to become the person that I didn't even know was capable of being. I'll actually never forget, I had a close friend getting ready to go into the Army, and I said, hey, I just met Becca, just met her. And I told him, I said, hey, before you go, and I'm not able to communicate with you very often, as you go through boot camp and everything, I'm predicting now that my life's going to look a lot different a year from now. And he laughed in my face. And if he listens to this, he's going to recall every bit of this and think, he's like, there's no way, And then now, everything that's, of course, happened with Becca and getting married and having a kid. And so when I met that right person, it pushed me to become the man that I knew I was capable of being, or that I didn't know I was capable of being, but I trusted God knew I was capable of being. And so I think the highs would be, it's not about real estate. It's not about income. It's about who you become in the process.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's the ultimate high, is that my entrepreneurship journey has made me a better son of God. It's made me a better husband, a better father, a better family member, a better friend. And those are the things that I really look forward to as I continue to grow in entrepreneurship. How do we face all of the challenges and all of the pressure that comes with success? The Bible teaches us in Luke chapter 12, verse 48, that to whom much is given, much is required. And, we were just talking about Keller Williams before we started recording. When you're at the top of your game, such as Keller Williams being the number one real estate company in the world, there's a target on your back.
Yeah.
And so now all of a sudden, when you first start something and it's cute, everybody thinks it's awesome. You have a lot of supporters, but then as you continue down that journey, all of a sudden the supporters start to fall by the wayside. Maybe you surpass them, and so they want to pull you back down to where you're at. I made a video years ago, and I often see it in my memories, about crabs in a bucket. I remember being in a store as a little kid back in the day. They still had the crabs in the bucket, and we wanted to go mess with the crabs, and one of them would almost be out of the bucket and the other one would pull it back down.
Yes.
That's exactly the way our society is, and oftentimes the way that the people closest to us are. And I've learned to not hold that against that person. They're not meaning to hold you back as much as they can't figure out how to love themselves enough to propel themselves to keep up with you or wherever they desire to be in life as well.
Yeah. Our environment is so critical. Yeah. So critical. Who we surround ourselves with is so critical. And I love this conversation because as we sit here and we walk through this conversation, you are the real life example of Gary Keller's 6 personal perspectives. And it's something that we teach. And Gary went out and asked questions and interviewed high achievers because he wanted to know what makes the difference in a high achiever and those that are not. And he found 6 things that were different. And as we have this conversation, they keep popping into my mind because we've gone through these 6 personal perspectives in this conversation. And number 1 is that we have to start with self-mastery. We have to master ourselves. We have to master our thinking, our knowledge, and our skills. Right. And then it's the 80-20 rule. 20% of what you do, your activities, will bring you 80% of your results. And what are those 20%? And we work together to figure out that 20% for you that would bring you that 80% of your results. And then it's make learning-based the foundation. And how do you continue to grow and be learning-based? And then removing those limiting beliefs, right? And then it's accountability and staying accountable to ourselves. And so as we walk through this conversation, I can't help but think, because I teach those all the time, I can't help but think about those, that you are the walking, talking reality of those 6 personal perspectives. And having known you as a young man coming into this industry and to see where you are now, I cannot wait to see where you go from here as a person and as a businessman.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that greatly. And it's certainly, I talked about, we don't know what the future holds. Will the Rutherford team stay at Keller Williams? Indefinitely, who knows? Maybe one day we'll become our own broker. No one knows what the future holds. And yet I'll always be thankful for Keller Williams and the start that they've given me, and how much that they have propelled me to be the person that I am today, right? And I think about their motto is where entrepreneurs come to thrive.
Yeah.
And I agree with that 100%. They've got the right tools in the right places, and the right people that love the culture is absolutely amazing. And I think the same goes with Bold. There's a reason, one of the first things we do on day one in the Bold room is see who's been there and get to know the room and how many times they've been to Bold. And some of the most successful people in the room are standing up in the Bold 10 times, 12 times, et cetera, et cetera. And so, hats off to Keller Williams and everything that they continue to do to help us make sure, just like the class we're going to this afternoon, with all the changes going on in our industry in particular, they make sure that we stay at the top of our game, and that we're ready for whatever those changes are going to be. And I think that's important, whatever industry you're involved in, out there listening to this, that you are surrounded and you're in alignment with people that have the same values as you and that are going to continue to strive to be the best no matter what's going on, where they're able to drown out the outside noise, if you will. So thank you for this. This has been incredible.
It's been my pleasure.
Let's do one last takeaway. If there's something you wanted the audience to take away, I feel like they've had a lot within this episode. What's one takeaway? I love catching people by surprise that you'd love for them to take away today.
Well, I think one of the most important lessons that we can learn, or skills that we can develop, is how to take those limiting beliefs and turn them around into positive statements and make a choice to think positively instead of negatively. That one thing can change somebody's life significantly.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I heard you correctly, I'm in control of my future.
Absolutely.
I love that.
You're in control of your habits, which are in control of your future.
That's right. Show me your habits and I can show your future. Well, Thank you again so much for being in this. Thank you for doing life with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when we moved on from coaching together, you've still pretty much been a coach there for me. So just thank you for that. Thank you for all the blessings that you continue to give to me, Becca, and Dusty. And we love you and we're honored to have you today.
Awesome. Thank you. And you know what my fee is, and that's a little time with Dusty.
Absolutely. We'll make it happen. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for checking out today's episode. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Accelerate Through Life podcast. Please rate and review the show wherever you get your podcast. See you next time.